the privilege and the honor of now introducing you to William Henry, who is an author, investigative mythologist, regular guest presenter on Ancient Aliens, and star of Arcanum TV. William is your guide into the transformative power of art and symbols of human ascension. He has been documenting humanity's awakening to its spiritual magnificence for over 20 years. Inspired by the great accomplishments of antiquity, William brings evidence of our divinity. By bringing to life the stories of ascension through art, he teaches the secrets of the soul, transfiguration, or metamorphosis, and connects people to one another across cultures, time, and space. He's the author of 16 books and numerous DVD programs on ancient mythology and neo-archaeology with a Stargate twist. By applying the latest theories in science and consciousness to ancient myths of the gated, illuminated ones, gods, including Sumerian, Egyptian, and Holy Grail gateway, he hopes to uncover the secrets of the guarded by such groups as the Illuminati. His latest book, Oracle of the Illuminati, I think this is an old bio, states that we're on the verge of rediscovering sacred science of creating peace on earth, and we'll update that later, brother. So, and also we've done a lot of events with William on our show, many on Egypt, Stargate Egypt, the Art of Ascension, in which he had a lot of art from Egypt. And we also have Halo 1.0, which is a 2-day retreat coming up on Portal to Ascension with William as well. So without any further ado, let's bring him on.
Yeah.
Hey, brother.
Neil, let me start the video. Pardon me.
There we go.
Well, I just want to say, Neil, what I love about William is that he brings ancient knowledge into our modern time with relevancy. It's not just like history. It's like, well, this is current events, what these ancients are telling us, the structures of consciousness and the ways to use it. Yeah. William. Is that true?
Thank you all very much. It's really great to be here this afternoon. What a wonderful event. Yeah. And I love the theme of the connection between Atlantis and Egypt. I think that is such an important one. Shall I just dive into my presentation?
Yeah, go for it. Let me just say that when we came up with the topic, you're the first person that came to mind, just because I feel everything that's been covered today is really up your alley in regards to all that you share. So just appreciate you being here, brother.
My pleasure. Thank you, Neil, for asking me again. Really, it's wonderful. So thank you, everybody, for being here. I remember the first time I went to Egypt, it was back in the early 2000s, and I was doing presentations then called Egypt, Shadow of Atlantis. And I was, of course, really deep into this connection here between the Atlantean civilization and Egypt as a legacy of that civilization. And I was soon to learn that there's a lot of pushback involved in that, especially from Egyptologists. They don't like this connection at all. And they bring up the dreaded A word, and they don't like to contemplate this possibility. But there's a lot of evidence that's there, and some of it has been discussed today. And I remember early in those early days, looking into the creation mythologies of ancient Egypt, specifically the work of Dr. Eve Raymond, who's a British academic, Manchester University, I believe. She had translated the Edfu creation text. Now, these are, at that time, early 2000s, they were very, very little known texts that told an incredible story of formless light beings that came to Earth and founded a civilization they referred to as the Island of the Egg. These formless light beings take on physicality. They kickstart this civilization. And then in the short version of this story, the very short version of the story, there is a cataclysm. And before the cataclysm, these beings, the gods themselves now, had secreted away what is described as a relic in the story, in the creation text. And then after the cataclysm, they retrieved this relic and restarted civilization. And I can remember reading that thinking, why isn't she connecting this with Atlantis? This is gotta be the source text for Plato's Atlantis story. He had said that his cousin had been in Egypt and learned the story of Atlantis written on a pillar. Could this be the source text? Well, it wasn't long after that Nat Geo got wind of what I was saying and making this, what I thought then was a very important connection. And the next thing I know, Nat Geo goes to Egypt with me. And they're featuring me in a program called Atlantis, Is It Real? And little did I know that this was going to be like Nat Geo putting me into a blender and pressing chop. I mean, they just literally just did everything they could to completely dismantle not only my argument about the connection between these texts, but in a way they got kind of personal too. And I realized that's kind of typical of how mainstream archaeology, Egyptology, people in charge of telling our historical narrative, anything that challenges the status quo, that's going to be their response. So that was a huge lesson for me. But I continued in my research, and it wasn't 3-4 years after that I published my book, Star Walkers and the Dimension of the Blessed, in which I went into great detail about the connection between the Edfu creation text and the story of Atlantis. And that carried me through another 10 years or so until we're doing an Ancient Aliens episode about ancient Egypt. And we're talking about especially the idea of space probes. And during the show research, my show prep research, I started re-looking at the Edfu creation text, because one of the things that we were going to talk about on Ancient Aliens was this idea of what was called the von Neumann probe. A von Neumann probe is a starship sent out by a super advanced civilization that's packed with AI and nanotechnology and genetics, everything you need basically to quote unquote add water and kickstart a civilization. And as I'm looking into the von Neumann probes, in the back of my mind is this voice saying, that's exactly like the Edfu creation text. They're talking about something very similar to that. So I wrote a very long article about this, which is actually available on my website, and I'm going to direct it to you now. Excuse me, just one moment. I'll open up my presentation. Excuse me, let me just find this presentation. Sorry, guys. I should have had this loaded up. My mistake. There we go. So I wrote this very long article on my website, williamhenry.net, called Ancient Alien, Artificially Intelligent Astro Chickens, Self-Replicating Robots in the Ancient Egyptian Island of the Egg. And what this was, of course, was about were these von Neumann probes, which scientists call astro chickens, because the idea is that these starships, these ships are like chickens that can go to a planet, lay an egg, and out pops civilization. And it was uncanny, the correspondence between the archetypal imagery in the Edfu creation text and what science is now talking about, how we one day might migrate into other worlds and how we would send advanced ships, these astro chickens, that would essentially act as forerunners for us in establishing these civilizations. So that was 2016. Then in 2017, along comes Umuamua, which was an all hands on deck moment for astronomers all over the world. This space object behaving intelligently comes out of nowhere, enters our solar system, makes an abrupt turn, and accelerates out of our solar system, leaving astronomers' heads absolutely spinning. Well, one of those astronomers, of course, was Dr. Avi Loeb, the famous Harvard astrophysicist who's now very deeply involved in the disclosure movement. And Avi Loeb and his team at Harvard put forth the concept, the belief, the idea, the hypothesis that Umuamua is a von Neumann probe. That was something I had already been thinking about. And it's like, wait a minute, could it be possible that Earth was visited many hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions of years ago by a von Neumann probe, similar to what we think Umuamua is? And is that what is recorded in the Edfu creation text? So I'm going to let you, on your own, go to my website, williamhenry.net, and take a look at Umuamua and the ancient Egyptian astro chickens. I like to joke that that's not the name of my band, but it could be a great band name. but it is a way for you to kind of peer into this window of how modern physics, modern astrophysics, and concepts about migrating into space seem to have already been discussed in the ancient Egyptian texts. So I wanted to leave that on the table for you today as a correspondence to this conversation about Atlantis. But in fact, what I really want to talk about is not just the tours that my wife Claire and I do, and we certainly invite all of you to join us in Egypt in October. But what I've come to talk with you about today is ancient Egypt's ET lineage, specifically relative to the lion people. I've never done this presentation anywhere before, so I'm grateful to Neil Gower and Portal to Ascension for opening up this venue to be able to put this forward. And I hope you enjoy my remarks today on the lion people. I can distinctly remember being in the British Museum in London, must have been 10 years ago, and I'm looking at this cat, and I'm enamored with this cat, and I look at the placard beside the cat, and it says, the ancient Egyptians worshipped cats. They even believed the gods could incarnate as cats. And I think I probably burst out laughing at that moment, because as a cat lover and somebody who just adores cats, it's like that figures. That's why cats are the way they are. They're the gods incarnate. They sometimes act like that anyway, right? But that was just one of those imprint kind of moments. The gods could incarnate as cats. I mean, think about that, especially the way we treat cats today. And here is the cat from the face on view with the golden ring and the ujat symbol on its neck, and then also the beetle symbolic of rebirth and resurrection on its head. But that got me thinking about all of those times I had been in Egypt, especially with my wife Claire in our groups when we go to the Sekhmet chapel at Karnak, where we encounter this astonishing 3,500-year-old living statue of Sekhmet, who of course is the warrior goddess and goddess of healing. Now, so many incredible things happen during our tours in this chapel. As many of you know, my wife Claire is Claire everything, clairaudient. She has all of these perceptions. On a scale of 1 to 10, she's a 10, right? On a good day, I can be like a 5. I can be maybe a 4. I can be a 5. And I just have to tell you, I have walked into this secluded chapel, and I have been licked on the face by this statue, standing there, literally, palpably feeling a cat licking my face, and I'm sure it's this statue. In fact, the legend at Karnak is that they keep her locked up in this room so she doesn't walk around the Karnak temple complex and scare the children. Another time that I walked in there, I was with one of our guests, and both of us distinctly heard the sound of kittens meowing. And now the walls are about 2 feet thick in this chapel. And so that means if kittens had been outside of this chapel, there's no way we would have been hearing them inside this tiny enclosed room. So these are just a couple examples, and we've got just dozens of photos of extraordinary visual effects that have happened while people are standing before this astonishing living statue. She is alive. She is imbued with the presence of the lion goddess Sekhmet, the goddess, the warrior goddess, goddess of healing. And no matter where I am in museums around the world, I mean, I had my first, I had a heart chakra opening in Egypt in those early years, 2004, 2005, maybe. And after that, I would get around red granite statues like this one here in the Turin Museum in Italy, and I would have this just profound heart opening. It'd be like dowsing rods opening in my chest. And I always attribute that as a gift that originally came from Sekhmet and my encounters with Sekhmet in Egypt. But just look into the eyes of these profound statues that are now found in museums all over the world of the cat goddesses. This is Sekhmet again, but she goes by alternative names. She's called Mut, which is the root of our English word mother. This is we still call our mothers Muti today after Mut, the lion goddess. She is the Lady of Heaven, the Lady of Heaven. Now, immediately you're thinking, well, wait a minute, is William trying to say that that Muti or Sekhmet or any of these goddesses are actually leonine in form. And my answer to that would be, I think these are star lineage beings. These are star beings who can take on physicality, and very often they shapeshift into a form that we think of as leonine. So I'm not going to say to you that I believe that they are actually leonine, but that is a possibility, because the way the Egyptian artists, who are incredibly skilled, I mean, nobody can barely match the perfection and the accomplishments of the Egyptian artists in their skill, but they're also could be faithfully creating or recreating images of what they actually saw. Now, whether they saw those beings physically walking around Karnak, like the local legend says, or if they saw them in their mind's eye, I can't say for sure. And in a way, it really doesn't matter, because they are insistent that the lion people are, in fact, leonine. Now, cats, as we love them today, are known to use ESP to predict danger to themselves or their companions and their environment. They communicate eloquently with sound, meows, and also with movement. They soothe and they comfort the sick. So think about this. If earthly cats can do all this, then if we are talking about a highly evolved leonine species, what are they capable of doing? What are they capable of doing? And that's where we now start to think about Sekhmet, Muti, Bastet, and all the other lion people as actual incarnate beings, physical beings. Some propose that there is much, much more behind the constant references to the sun god Ra being leonine in nature, and also his entire family is leonine. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, that is referenced over and over again. And in the Book of the Dead, Ra is portrayed as a cat slaying Apep, the serpent of chaos. Now, this points to a very important role that the felines, the cats, play in our cosmos. They are able to conquer darkness, conquer evil. They are sort of masters of nullifying chaos, if you will, which is what Ra, as a cat here, is portrayed doing, as he's got this knife in his hand, subduing this serpent, Apep. Ra's daughter is Bastet. She's also feline. There's numerous statues of Bastet that are very similar to Sekhmet, and these all speak to this idea that these beings are actually physical beings. Now, just as a quick tie-in here, we can go over to India, and we find lion people also in India. This is the Yoga Narasimha, who's Vishnu, an incarnation of the avatar Vishnu in his man-lion avatar. Narasimha means man-lion in Sanskrit, and is the name of one of the 10 main avatars or incarnations of the Hindu god Vishnu. For devotees, the man-lion form recalls a myth that describes his superhuman defeat of a seemingly invincible demonic foe. Well, that's exactly what Ra did in Egypt. He was leonine, and he defeated the demonic foe, the master of chaos, Apep. And here we go over to India, we find the exact same concept. But in India, the lion man, Narasimha, is neither man nor beast, but both. So now we're introducing the possibility that we're talking about hybrid beings. Shapeshifters is where my comfort zone is. These are advanced beings that can take on physicality, and they can shift into this leonine form. No matter where we find them, the lion people are our teachers. They are initiators. This is what we see portrayed here in this beautiful pillar from the temple at Komombo, where we see actually not Sekhmet, but this time we see another variation of the lion goddess. Her name is Tefnut. And here she is with Mot, with the ostrich feather. And we can clearly see a transference of energy from Tefnut to Mot. The lion goddess is always identifiable because she wears the cobra sun headdress, or uraeus, as it's called, that symbolizes Ujet, which means wholeness or perfection. okay, now we've just put another layer of meaning and symbolism on this imagery. By wearing the uraeus, this indicates that the lion people are perfect beings. This means, as I'm going to develop, that they could be the same as the perfect light beings written about by the Essenes. We'll get to that tie-in here in just a moment. But clearly, they are our teachers, and what they are here to teach us is how to become more whole, more holy, more complete, more compassionate, and more perfect beings, like all cats, right? So here we have Tefnut with Isis on the temple wall here. Again, we're still at Kamumbo looking at this image. And in the detail here, you see just the astonishing mastery of the Egyptian sculptors as they portray this living image of Tefnut on the wall here at Kamumbo. This is also at Kamumbo. So when we're looking at these lion goddesses, it's possible that we can interchange them. They can be called Sekhmet, they can be called Bastet, Wajet, Tefnut. They're all ultimately names, variations of the same tribe or den of beings of the lion people. The lion goddesses embody or personify the all-seeing eye of the Wajet or Ujat, meaning whole one. As I said a moment ago, that is what their teaching is all about. And this magnificent image is from the temple of Seti at Abydos, where we see Tefnut holding the all-seeing eye of Horus, the Widjet, which is their symbol for wholeness and perfection. And here we see now Tefnut with the symbol of Nefertim on top of her head, again beside now Atum on an arc-like platform. And then beneath her, or beside her, we see a human figure offering the new jars of highly advanced astral light, if you will. This is the resurrection oil that Seti is offering to Tefnut. And we know that this is an oil-related image because of the symbol of Nefertim, the god of perfume, who's also the son of Sekhmet, portrayed on this temple wall. In later times, Wedjet or Sekhmet was often depicted as a woman with a snake's head, or as a woman wearing the uraeus. So the cat has harnessed the power of the serpent and now wears it, and the serpent now becomes a symbol of illumination. Another early depiction of Wadjet is from the Temple of Isis at Philae, which is what we're looking at here, where we see a cobra entwined around a papyrus stem. And this symbolism originates as far back as 3100 BC, which is the first dynasty in Egypt, where we see the first example in Egypt of the snake entwined around a staff symbol. That is a symbol of this goddess. And I pulled out my serpent staff from Karnak in honor of that serpent staff symbolism. I just love to hold the staff when I'm working at my desk because it's got that essence vibration of Egypt in it. And it's also very comfortable just to kind of rest on as well. But the idea is that this symbolism carries forward. Moses lifted the serpent of healing in the wilderness. Jesus later said the serpent on a pole that Moses lifted was the secret of eternal life. Well, wow, now we're getting really deep into the teaching of the lion people. It's about wholeness and holiness and perfection, but ultimately their business, if you will, in coming to earth has to do with transmitting the secrets of eternal life. And by the way, the lion people are not just female or feminine. We have male examples of the lion god, as we see here, this lion god on the feathered ascension throne from this beautiful or magnificent ceiling at the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. And the lion has the serpent on its head, again, symbolic of the uraeus or the Wadjet. And then we have a standing lion holding the symbol of Set behind him, along with the key of life. This is another male lion. This is in the Temple of Kanzu at Karnak. Beautiful color image of this figure with this pharaoh offering incense to Kanzu, or excuse me, to the lion god. We have another male lion god here standing in front of the the lotus blossom or lotus stalk. But it's primarily the female essence that we're talking about today, is this very nurturing warrior goddess, healing goddess that also has the secrets of attaining wholeness, perfection, and ultimately immortality. This is a scene that I always make a beeline for when we go to the Temple of Isis at Philae. It's just so realistic to me. And you can just imagine the ancient Egyptians taking a little dab of oil here and placing their finger on this temple wall and activating this image, and Tefnut or Sekhmet coming to life, and literally the walls speaking to the initiates standing before this image. So powerful. And here it is again. I'm thinking this is so lifelike that, and with the incantations, with the chanting that would have gone on in these temple walls, that you can just begin to sense in many different levels, the Sekhmet walking off the wall right into your consciousness. And this is something that I love at many of the Egyptian temples. This is at the Temple of Horus at Edfu. You get away from the central part of the temple and you go off into the side chambers, and you look up and your breath is suddenly taken away, because you look at this image of Bastet or of Sekhmet on the wall, and it looks like a three-dimensional being just walking past, right? And you just stop and you're stunned in your tracks at how lifelike it is and how realistic these portrayals are. And you can just imagine a procession of gods and goddesses led by Sekhmet just walking past you in the temple here. Just truly, truly remarkable. Another example from the Temple of Horus at Edfu on the wall, where we see Sekhmet just walking along, and you just stand beside her and you swear you're in the presence of a living being. Look at the mastery here, the detail, the expression on the face, the eyes, the mouth, everything. Just truly, truly remarkable. You can bring it to life even more in the detail. Just wonderful, wonderful imagery. Now, the thing is that the lion people were not restricted to Egypt. They were all over the ancient, what we today call the Middle East. In the ancient world, the Lady of the Lions, or the Lion Lady of Heaven, is an image that extends across time for more than 6,000 years and across a wide geographic region, as far as Minoan Crete to the west, Anatolia, present-day Turkey to the north, Sumer, Babylon, modern Iraq to the east. There's more than 40 goddesses in Egypt who were associated with lions or other felines, including Inanna, the Queen of Heaven, who we see here, who is winged. She holds a lion on the end of a tether here, and she's standing on that lion, indicating that she is the lion goddess. This particular example is Egyptian, but this is a Canaanite goddess, a pre-Israelite goddess from the Bronze Age, whose name is Kadesh. Her name means the Holy One. Who is she? Some say as she's an unknown deity whose name is Kadesh. Now, in English, that to me sounds like a pun on Kaddish. Kaddish, the letters D and the letters T are interchangeable. So how does this work? That in English, we find this pun between this lion goddess named Kaddish and that she is portrayed as a cat lady. That's really cool to me. I think that is really awesome. And it speaks to the flexibility of English as a sort of a decoder ring for linking together seemingly unrelated concepts. But actually, they're totally related. The Kaddish is a cat goddess, right? The other thing that's interesting about Kaddish's name is that her name is identical to the Hebrew chant Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Sabaoth, or Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. Now, Kaddish, her name means the Holy One. And so the Israelites must have carried over some memory of this. And when they're chanting Kadosh, 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 the Holy One, are they in the back of their minds thinking about the lion people and the cat goddess? Is that what's happening here? This ancient Hebrew chant of exaltation is sung by the celestial choirs at the feet of the throne of God. And it makes me wonder if, again, the cats are somehow involved in this story in a more dramatic way than perhaps we realize. We know that 3,400 years ago, during Egypt's 18th dynasty, a Canaanite Hebrew goddess called Kadesh, or Asherah is another of her names, was integrated into the Egyptian list of Neteru, or divine beings, as a form of Hathor, the goddess of love and joy. This is why Kadesh, the lion lady, has the Hathor flip hairdo. They're part of the same tribe of beings. They use the epithet for Kadesh, mistress of all the gods, lady of the stars of heaven, beloved of Ptah. Oh, now that's very important. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Great of magic, mistress of the stars, eye of Ra, without her equal. So the lion lady, the queen of heaven, the lion lady of heaven, is extraordinarily important to not just the Egyptians, but the Israelites, but also now to the Babylonians and the Sumerians, because Kadesh is the same as Astarte or Ashtar. She's the goddess associated with the lion in Babylon. And if you're in the British Museum, you can visit this incredible plaque yourself of Inanna, or Ishtar, Ashtoreth, as the lion goddess wearing her horned headdress, indicating that she's one of the divine Anunnaki goddesses. She's given the title, the Lion Lady. So now we have a crossover into the Anunnaki tradition as well, where the lion is featured as the totem of the Lion Lady of Heaven. Here's Inanna again, shown standing on a lion, and she's said to have, as the story develops, Inanna stole what are called the May, or magical tablets of wisdom, from Enki, who is the Egyptian god of technology, creator god. And she is said to have delivered that knowledge to her own people. Now, here on Portal to Ascension, just recently, I did a presentation about the May and the Malamu and the Anunnaki, in which I made the connection that the May tablets were actually, you can think of those as ascension tablets, that in fact, what Inanna, the lion lady, stole from Enki were the secrets of ascension. And she taught them to her people. And again, in Babylon, she is portrayed with the crown of Anu, the horned headdress of the Anunnaki, standing on a lion, because she is the lion lady. Now, regarding those May tablets, according to Sumerian legend, it was at his temple medical facility at Eridu that the serpent god Enki housed these tablets until Inanna, the lion lady of heaven, stole them from him. These were considered crystal-like objects that contained all the secrets of the Anunnaki, about how to build megaliths, how to travel in the stars as a light being, secrets of medicine, you name it. Everything that the Anunnaki knew was brought to earth and given to humanity in these May tablets. And Enki, once again, as I said a moment ago, is symbolized by the serpent. He is the serpent god. So here, once again, is the serpent-cat symbolism reunited. And there are many scholars that are very comfortable in saying to you that Enki, is the serpent, was the wise serpent being of Eden, the tree of knowledge. So that is a very important connection. It's a later connection, but it's very important to us in our study of ancient Egyptian for the reason that when we come back to Karnak temple, the Karnak complex, we see this extraordinary scene of the initiation of King Seti into the ascension mysteries of ancient Egypt. Who is responsible for transmitting the ascension mysteries to King Seti at Karnak? The answer is, it's the lion goddess. It's Sekhmet, who is portrayed here facing King Seti. It's Sekhmet in conjunction with Thoth, or Tahuti, the god of divine magic and alchemy, who is writing the name of God into an oil jar that's hanging here in this tree of life, in which King Seti is portrayed kneeling and then holding that powerful name of God in his hand. This scene is the forerunner, if not the original scene of which we later read about in the book of Genesis as the serpent in the tree of knowledge. And as the scene follows, we then follow Sekhmet holding the symbol for the secrets of the hundreds of thousands of years. In other words, the secrets of eternity, the secrets of ascension in her hand while she attunes King Seti, who kneels before Ra. Now, that is absolutely profound, because what we are seeing here is this transfer of knowledge from the lion goddess to King Seti, who's only one of 3 humans that I'm aware of in ancient Egypt who actually ascended and became a saintly being or a perfected being. So this is an extraordinary scene where Seti is saying, and he's the one who is responsible for creating these inscriptions. It was Seti the first, or his son Ramses II, that created these inscriptions. But he is saying that I know the secrets of the lion people. I have been given these secrets. And again, Seti is considered a resurrected being and one of only 3 humans to ascend in the ancient Egyptian tradition. So very important that it's our lion goddess who's responsible for the transmission of these secrets of ascension to Seti. So this is similar then to the lion lady of heaven, Inanna, stealing the tablets of ascension from Enki and teaching them to her people. Here we have the lion goddess Sekhmet teaching them to her people in Egypt. Now, this scene is very important to me, and I've discussed it in detail here on Portal to Ascension before, so I'm just briefly going to walk through it. Because when we're looking at Sekhmet attuning Seti, who has just emerged from the tree of life, that scene is strikingly similar, if not identical in meaning, to this powerful scene, this painting by Michelangelo, which of course is in the Sistine Chapel in Rome. The reason it's interesting to us is because in the 1990s, there was a neurosurgeon who visited the Sistine Chapel, and he looked up at that and he said, that is Yahweh, the Old Testament God, getting ready to transmit something like the Holy Spirit to Adam that made him a living being. He breathed into Adam's nostril and he became a living being. And this is the moment that Michelangelo is capturing. Well, what's important about this is that this neurosurgeon said this is Yahweh in a cutaway of the human brain. Well, there's no way that Michelangelo could have known this, because that we weren't doing that type of anatomical research at that time, at least not legally. So he wouldn't have been able to have the forensics that show what a cutaway of the brain looks like. But it illustrates a very important moment in neuroscience that took place around 200,000 years ago, when some mysterious event occurred that spontaneously led to the modern human brain coming into existence in Africa. And no neuroscientist can answer what exactly it was that happened at that time, but what the result was the activation of our neocortex, and the result of that was modern humans came into existence. The activated neocortex is what makes possible our judgments, our knowledge about good and evil. It's the site of our creativity. Everything that makes us human, from music to math to art, is done in the neocortex. And if that's not activated, you and I are living a very different existence. We have no ability to discern between I and all. We have no ability to discern between where my skin ends and yours begins. Everything is just one. Everything is essentially a blur in a way. And after that, now we can make these distinctions. We can make judgments, and we can do art. We can do math. Carl Sagan said it's the place where matter is transformed into consciousness, and that civilization is the product of our neocortex. So who activated that neocortex and how? Neuroscientists really don't know. They guess. They know, have some ideas. As John Hoffaker, who's an archaeologist at the University of Colorado in Boulder, said, the neocortex was mysteriously switched on, awakened 200,000 years ago, but then 75,000 years ago, there was another upgrade that took place when what he describes as a super brain kicks in. That super brain is what gives us our psychic connection among one another. We can look at each other and read each other's minds because we have this activated neocortex, and this kicked in. Then Hoffaker says another 35,000 years after that, 40,000 years after that, we have another burst in the activity of our neocortex. And V.S. Ramachandran, a UCLA neuroscientist, refers to this as well. He said it was 75,000 years ago that there was a sudden emergence and rapid spread of skills unique to human beings, like the use of tools, the use of fire, shelters, and the use of language, plus the ability to read another's mind and interpret their behavior intentions. All of this happened at once, and nobody knows how. Nobody knows how. Whatever it was that happened at that moment resulted in modern humans coming onto the scene. That means you and I. Now, here's the thing, and here's where I'm going with this. The activation of the neocortex blossomed in great change in humankind's cognitive and symbolic world with the start of the Upper Paleolithic period around 40,000 years ago. So 200,000 years ago, we get an activation. 75,000 years ago, there's an upgrade. 40,000 years ago, suddenly there's an explosion in human artistic ability that comes out of nowhere. And the very oldest piece of human art is what we're looking at here, the El Castillo cave in Spain, these handprints. The second oldest human art, the second oldest piece of art created by humans, is this lion figure, this lion human. Discovered in Germany, it's 30,000 years old. It's a composite figure, a combination of a human and a lion, and she or he, we're not sure if it's male or female, is the oldest known representation of a being that does not exist in physical form, but symbolizes ideas about the supernatural. Now, think about this for a second. All of a sudden, humans have the ability, because of our activated neocortex, mysteriously activated neocortex, to create art. What's the first piece of art that we create after our handprint? A lion being? Are you kidding me? What's going on here? Is this some kind of like after effect of the attunement? Am I saying what I think I'm saying, that perhaps the lion people could have been involved in the activation of our neocortex, and this explains why the very first piece of human art is a lion person? Jill Cook is the curator of Paleolithic collections at the British Museum, and she suggests that unless the sculpture was created slowly at odd moments over several months, someone as a skilled artist may have been excused from other subsistence tasks to work specifically on this piece. Another researcher, Neil McGregor, in the BBC4 series, Living with the Gods, said, so why would a community living on the edge of sustenance, who are barely surviving, whose primary concerns were finding food, keeping that fire going, protecting children from predators, allow someone to spend so much time away from those tasks? She replied that what it was about was a relationship to things unseen, to the vital forces of nature that you need to perhaps propitiate, and perhaps connect to in order to ensure your successful life. Well, again, I'm thinking there could be even more to it than that. That maybe what we're looking at here is a recollection of who it was that literally activated our neocortex. By the way, the researchers have said that the wear on the body of this lion being caused by handling suggests that he was or she was passed around and rubbed as part of a narrative or ritual that would explain her appearance and meaning. We don't know what that story is, but what I'm asking you to think about is that what if that story is about the lion people who came to Earth, tweaked our DNA, activated our neocortex, and now we're the benefactors of that action. And this is why the very first piece of art is of a lion being. Carl Sagan, where he's still alive, would be laughing right now probably, because his estimation was that it was cosmic rays from Cygnus that activated our neocortex. V.S. Ramachandran said it was the sudden appearance of mirror neurons in our neocortex that allowed us to imitate or emulate one another's actions. Group sex, psychedelic drugs, eating meat, these are all hypothesized by scientists as other contributing factors. So something extraordinary and purposeful gave us the mental abilities that we have today. We're not the product of random evolution, as we used to be taught. We are the product of two chromosomes that were joined to form one. This is what is known as the chromosome 2 hypothesis, that the unnatural but intentional merger of these chromosomes is responsible for our capacity for emotion, sympathy, empathy, self-regulation, art, science, music, everything. Without this intentional fusing of these two chromosomes, we would not be human. We would just be guys running around the savannah in a blur. Okay. But once this happened, it changed everything. And the National Academy of Science says that we conclude that the locus cloned in this telomere to telomere fusion we're discussing here is not natural. It is not natural. It is intentional. Something or someone did it. It's not the product of evolution. There was an editing that took place. And the reason is the telomeres fuse on the inside of the chromosome rather than the outside, as they do in nature. So who is it, or what was it, that is responsible for this? Who did this and why? This moment is that moment of the serpent in the tree of life. This is the moment immortalized in the book of Genesis and told throughout the world and known as the fall of man. We don't know exactly who, but we do know how. CRISPR-Cas9 technology is well known now in open literature as a way for us to cut, copy, paste, edit our DNA. But when we go back to the ancient Egyptians and ask them who did it, they tell us it was Ptah. Ptah, the god of technology who came from Sirius. Ptah just happens to be the consort of Sekhmet. Now, whoa, that gives a lot suddenly of connective tissue to the hypothesis that I'm putting forward here, that it was the lion people in conjunction with Ptah who are responsible for fusing chromosome 2. Here's Ptah's business card. The Egyptians said that he is the architect of heaven and earth, master craftsman in working metal, sculptor, designer, fashioner of the bodies of men. He fashioned the body. He's even got a double helix in his hieroglyph. I believe that the reason why Ptah and the lion people fashioned our DNA was to make our human body a more conducive vehicle for ascension. And this is why then we see Sekhmet coming in, delivering the codes of ascension to King Seti. So these two, Sekhmet and Ptah, are actually working together on our ascension. That's one way that we can read this. And you can just imagine their conversation they have together. Hey, Ptah, hey, babe, how you doing? Did you have a good day? Yeah, I tweaked the DNA of humans. I got them all set up on the ascension path. Oh, good, says Sekhmet. I'll pop in a little bit later and start delivering the codes, right? Something like that. That is the role of these two god beings, the lion goddess Sekhmet and her husband, Ptah, who is the god of technology and alchemy, and also ultimately ascension. That is their business. That is why this tribe of beings came to Earth. This is the Harris Papyrus. It's in the British Museum. It's a wonderful example of Ptah wearing his feathered ascension suit, Sekhmet wearing her knotted dress, and also with their son Nefertim, who's the god of essential oils, perfume, and all of the resurrection oils. So these two, Sekhmet and Ptah, bequeathed all their knowledge to their son Nefertim, and he is definitely someone that we want to be paying close attention to when we're in the temples in Egypt, because the secrets that he possesses are immense, and they always have to do with what this family was all about: ascension. And here we have Ptah from the Temple of Seti at Abydos writing the codes of ascension literally into the palm of King Seti's hand while he's in the Tree of Life. In my opinion, and this is my opinion based on the research, and I'm speculating, but I think that he's actually kneeling in the brain. That tree is a symbol for the human brain, specifically for our activated neocortex. So what we're actually seeing here are the gods activating our neocortex for the purposes of ascension. And let me say this, that Seti is well known as a general. As I said a moment ago, he is one of only 3 humans to have ascended in ancient Egypt. And he was charged with cleaning up the mess after this figure was on the scene. His name is Akhenaten, who is known as the rebel pharaoh, or the rebel king, who introduced the religion of light to the ancient Egyptians. A lot of people make a big deal out of Akhenaten's extraordinary features, and they say, oh, he looks like he's an alien. He must be an extraterrestrial. Well, my argument is, well, Akhenaten is shown as a cat, is half human, half sphinx, and nobody argues that he's a cat. But should they? Maybe we should start looking at Akhenaten as a leonine figure, as part of the lion tribe. He certainly brought the codes for ascension with him and was a purveyor of those codes. We won't go into detail right now, but the point I want to make at this moment has to do not with Akhenaten, but rather his wife, Nefertiti, who's considered the most beautiful woman that ever lived. As the wife of Akhenaten, Nefertiti took on the role of Tefnut, the lion goddess, who was the daughter and wife of Atum. She exhibits the same clothing fashion as in the images of Tefnut, especially this mysterious red sash. And also, Nefertiti took on the name of Tefnut. After the 4th regal year, she began to wear a mortar-shaped cap that was the headgear of Tefnut, the cat goddess, in her leonine aspect of a sphinx. Nefertiti was henceforth referred to as Tefnut herself, at once the daughter and the wife of the sun god. During the 18th and 19th dynasties, particularly during the Amarna period, when Akhenaten and Nefertiti were ruling, Tefnut was depicted in human form, wearing a low flat headdress topped with sprouting plants. Akhenaten's mother, Queen T, was depicted wearing a similar headdress, and she identified herself as Hathor Tefnut. So we have a very important lion people connection here between Akhenaten, Nefertiti, that is one that isn't often discussed. The iconic blue crown of Nefertiti is thought by archaeologist Joyce Tinsley to be derived from T's headdress and may indicate that she was also identifying with Tefnut, the lion goddess. So just think about those possibilities, that we're seeing a continuous lineage here now being transmitted through the line of Akhenaten. Akhenaten, we know, had a son. His name was Tutankhamun, and his throne is considered one of the most valuable relics in all of human history, and it is the lion throne. So once again, we have another very important tie-in, artistically speaking, with the lion people. And of course, on the back of the throne, we see, Tutankhamun being anointed in the blue lotus oil by Akhenaten, his wife, transforming Tutankhamun into a divine being, able then to sit on the lion throne. So what I'm asking you to think about here is that, what if these watcher beings, these netter, as they're also called, they're called netter and watchers, they must have known that the human neocortex was ready for their arrival. I mean, if they showed up 200,000 years ago and tried to teach the codes of ascension, it'd be like nothing, right? So we had to go through this process of activating our neocortex so we could understand the science, we could understand the math, we could understand all of the mental aspects of this. So what if the lion people were watching and waiting for that moment when our neocortex awakens? How did they know when we were ready? Perhaps, again, they were watching humanity for signs of awakening, or perhaps, as I suggest, they had a role in switching on the neocortex to begin with. And this is what we see over and over on the temple walls. This is Thoth or Tahuti with the codes of ascension and that stick that he's holding. We have a pharaoh in the tree of life, which I'm thinking is the brain, standing before who? Of course, our divine royal couple, Ptah and Sekhmet, because it's ultimately, the way I'm reading this, it's their handiwork that is exemplified here. The pharaoh is able to meet and perceive Ptah and Sekhmet because of the activated neocortex that was the gift of these god beings. This is a wonderful scene that I always make a beeline for when we're at the Ramesseum on the West Bank in Luxor. It's such a haunting scene to me. This is the temple of Ramses II, the son of King Seti. So Ramses II knew everything his father knew about ascension. And we look off in the distance here and we see Tefnut or Sekhmet together with her husband Ptah. And another example here, this one actually happens to be from Medinet Habu, beautiful image of Tefnut or Sekhmet and Ptah. And she's also got the red sash on here. But this important scene comes from the temple of Seti at Abydos, where once again, we have Sekhmet and Ptah together. We have Seti kneeling with the anointing oil, that all-important oil made of astral light that he's making an offering to these god beings, saying, essentially, thank you for awakening my neocortex. Thank you for giving me your son, Nefertim, who taught me the secret of this resurrection oil, because I'm going to be using it, and I'll be joining you all soon in the dimension of the blessed. Look at this detail here of Sekhmet here from the temple of Seti. It's just, look in that eye. It's like she is alive. And if Seti were to take a little dab of that oil and just gently anoint that scene there with his finger, we're told that scene on the wall would come alive and she would start speaking. At Philae, we find this beautiful image of Tefnut and Ptah together. So when we start paying attention, when we're in the temples of Egypt, we see the lion people everywhere. And everywhere we see the lion people, we're going to find these examples of attunements, of awakening consciousness. This is actually Sekhmet or Tefnut with Ramses II, offering to him the secret of the hundreds of thousands of years, the secrets of eternity, the ascension codes, as I refer to them. And man, did I get lucky with this photo or what? Look at that shaft of light just coming down over a tomb and just gently illuminating the ankh that he's holding to Ramses' nose, holding it to his nose because it's tipped with oil. And he's inhaling that oil. But again, just look at the majesty of Tefnut or Sekhmet over there on the right, how profoundly powerful she is always portrayed. They possess the keys and the codes of our ascension. They are the lion people are the ones that brought them here. I was so happy to go to Esna back in November 2021. They've been cleaning all of the temples in Egypt. It's eye-popping what is happening in these temples, the rehabilitation of these scenes, the color just leaps out, and you're just gobsmacked by what you're seeing. And I love this image here of Sekhmet sitting on her feathered ascension throne. She's got on her ascension garment, holding her lotus pillar. She's good to go with Isis or Hathor. Actually, that is Isis sitting behind her. So she's equated with these goddesses. At Kamumbo, I love standing before this portal. And I really do think of this scene as a portal. It's Ptolemaic, which means it's from around 200 BC, brand new at the time of Jesus and Mary Magdalene when they would have visited here and stood before this scene with their jaws dropping just like we are right now. When we come into the scene, we see the Ptolemaic king, maybe, I think it's Soter III, who's being attuned now by the cat goddess, by Bastet. Who is one of the gods and goddesses, rather, that the Ptolemies revered above all. So here he is, inhaling that oil-tipped ankh or key of life, receiving those codes from Bastet, the lion goddess. It's important when we're talking about oils and resurrection oils in Egypt that we make the note that in Egypt it was the Sem or Shem priests of Ptah who wore the leopard skin. In the tombs, this is in the tomb of Seti, you will see these special Sem priests wearing the leopard skin, because these priests are part of the retinue of the lion people or the cat people. And in fact, they are the ones who know the secrets of resurrection. That's why they're in this scene here. This is called the opening of the mouth ceremony from the Book of the Dead. And we have the Sem priest over there on the left, who's holding the incense burner and also has a jar filled with oil. In Tutankhamun's tomb, we find the Sem priest once again wearing the leopard skin in the opening of the mouth ceremony that transforms Tutankhamun into Osiris, the resurrected man, the god of resurrection. Now, in talking about Tutankhamun, we can make a very important connection going forward in history with the lion people into the Jewish tradition. The lions became the ruling tribe of Judah, the tribe of King David. And according to the Hebrew Bible, the throne of King Solomon, who was the son of David, was covered with ivory, overlaid with gold, and featured lions on each side of the armrest. That's exactly like Tutankhamun's throne, which is at least 500 years older than King Solomon's throne. So here we're seeing a crossover, a very important crossover, an importation of the importance of the Egyptian symbolism of the lion throne into the throne of King Solomon. And all kinds of crazy things are told about King Solomon's throne, that it flew, that it was a mechanical object of some kind. It's really, really bizarre. And one day perhaps we'll do a whole presentation on the throne of Solomon and where it is now. But what we're told in the Book of Kings is that 6 steps led up to it, and 12 lions stood on them, one at either end of each step. There was a round top at the back of the throne symbolizing the sun, just like Tutankhamun's his throne had the Aton disc on it. And the Bible passage claims nothing like this throne had ever been seen before. Well, that's not actually true, because something identical to it had already been seen in ancient Egypt long before. Solomon had something remarkable to say about lions. This just blows my mind. Solomon said, "Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse, with me from Lebanon. Look from the top of Amana, from the top of Shinir and Hermon or Sion, from the lions' dens, from the mountains of the leopards." Here, Solomon is clearly equating Sion or Mount Hermon with or the lion's den and the mountain of the leopards. Well, why does this matter to us? Well, it matters a great deal. The reason why is because according to the Essenes and according to the Sumerians in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the divine beings, the Anunnaki, in the Sumerian tradition, and the fallen angels in the Essene tradition descended from God's throne to the apex of Mount Hermon. So Solomon is saying Hermon is the lion's den, and we've already made important connections between the Anunnaki and the lion people. Are we able to make an assertion here that the lion's den is Mount Hermon, and that is a very important source place for the lion people? The Book of Enoch, which was written by the Essenes, tells us that 200 fallen angels, the Watchers, descended upon Mount Hermon, the lion's den, and they created human-angel hybrids called the Nephilim. Genesis tells us that the Nephilim were on earth in those days, and when the sons of God came into the daughters of men and they bore the children to them, these were the mighty ones, the mighty men of old, the men of renown, or the men of glory. So what this is saying is that these angels descended on the lion's den, mated with human females, and created hybrid offspring referred to as the mighty ones. Well, interestingly, it's said that Nimrod wore a leopard skin as a symbol of his mighty power derived from the Watchers. The Babylonian name for leopard is Nimr, and Rod means to subdue. Who's Nimrod? Nimrod is the Iraqi king who built the Tower of Babel, the ladder tower or stairway to heaven. The word Shem refers to Nimrod's tower when humankind gathered together to make a Shem, meaning a name or fame for itself. So here we have a Shem priest from Egypt wearing the leopard skin because he's got the secrets of anointing oils and resurrection oils as he's offering it to Osiris. And we have their very name associated with Nimrod, who built the Tower of Babel and was considered to be one of the mighty ones of the Nephilim. That's really profound. And this is telling us we've got a very important crossover here between the lion people in Egypt and the fallen angels in the Anunnaki, and these fallen angels are traditionally portrayed as humanoid beings. They're called fallen because they left God's divine throne. They were light beings originally. And when they crossed over a forbidden boundary, they took on physicality. They took on flesh and blood human bodies. And that's why they're called fallen. They're not fallen because they're evil. They're fallen because they're no longer in their higher frequency light bodies. We know this for a fact. This is absolute fact, because the New Testament says that the watchers, these fallen angels, are the angels which kept not their first estate. They didn't stay in their original habitat, but left their original habitation and are now bound by everlasting chains of darkness, DNA, awaiting the great day of judgment or balance when the cosmos reopens. The Greek word translated here, first estate, is okaterion, which according to Strong's Bible Dictionary speaks to a dwelling place or habitation of the body as a dwelling place for the spirit, an abode for the soul. Okay, but here's the thing, the important point. That term okaterion is used in only one other place in the Bible, in 2 Corinthians 5:2, and it refers to the resurrection body or eternal spiritual light body of Christ. What that means is that when the angels were in their original habitat, and I'm asking you to connect these angels with the lion people, when they're in their original habitat, they are in light body form. Then they phase into physicality, but then they also have the ability to phase back into their original habitat. This is exactly what Christ did in his resurrection. He attained the okaterion, or spiritual light body, as portrayed in Christian art as this radiant, luminous body of light. John the Revelator saw him on his divine throne surrounded by a rainbow. Well, this light body connection is hugely significant in our exploration today, because the best known biblical account featuring lions comes from the book of Daniel, chapter 6, where Daniel is thrown into the lion's den and miraculously survives. God sent an angel to shut the lions' mouths, and the lions did not hurt him, says Daniel. Biblical scholars say that this story in chapter 6 parallels and complements another story in chapter 3, the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. Very briefly, these three wise men were brought from the Temple of Solomon to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar, who had erected what's called the golden image of the beast. He tried everything to get this thing to work, clapping, dancing, singing, so forth, but he couldn't make it work. But he knew that these three wise men from the Temple of Solomon had the software to make it work. And they fire up what is called a fiery furnace in the book of Daniel. The three wise men put on their coat, their hat, their other garments, enter the fiery furnace, the lion's den. They come back out, and when they emerge, they're not alone. The Son of God is with them. Now, Bible commentators say that this is a foreshadowing or an earlier Old Testament appearance of Jesus, who appears in this fiery furnace with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He appeared in the lion's den with them. Is that what this is saying? That's the way I'm reading this. And this is an important tie-in, because it says that humans can enter into a zone of frequency, a portal, a Stargate, which is what I interpreted this as back in 2002, 2000, maybe even the year 2000, started researching this story of these three wise men in this portal. And it tells us that that could, in fact, be the lion's den of Daniel. According to Josephon, the beasts in the den received Daniel as faithful dogs might receive their returning master, wagging their tails and licking him. Wow. Okay. What if the lions aren't actual lions? What if the lions are the lion people? And Daniel, and in fact, the three wise men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, had gone into a portal where they met the lion people and then came back out. The Midrash Telahim says that the mouth of the lion's den was clothed with a huge stone, which had rolled off of itself from Palestine to Babylon for that purpose. So here's this giant stone that rolled from Palestine to Babylon, and it seals up the lion's den. And upon the stone sat an angel in the shape of a lion, so that Daniel's enemies might not harass him. Well, wait a minute. Rolling away the stone in a lion's den and all of that sounds familiar. At least it should, because this is what happened with the resurrection of Jesus. There was a severe earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descending from heaven, from the throne of God, one of these angels that can cross over the forbidden boundary, take on physicality and face back into his light body and return to that throne, came from heaven and rolled back the stone that sealed Christ's tomb and sat on it. That's exactly what just happened a moment ago. His appearance was like lightning and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were shaken and became like dead men because they were afraid of him. Is this angel one of Daniel's lion angels? Are the angels the lion people? Are they light beings again? This is where all this is pointing. Again, Matthew 28, 1-8. For an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled away the stone and sat upon it. So these lion people have the ability of rolling away stones that seal sepulchres and this type of thing. They're portrayed as lightning-like beings, which means they're plasma, and have the ability to phase in and out of physicality. So what if the angel in the tomb with Christ is one of the lion people? That's what I'm asking you to think about here. What if this angel is one of the lion people? The lion in Christianity also and always represents Jesus's resurrection. And it's thought because lions were believed to sleep with open eyes, a comparison of Christ in the tomb and Christ as the king. But all of these ties to resurrection that I've just bullet pointed for you are giving us a different slant on the nature of the lion people. They're emerging as light beings who phase into physicality and shapeshift and possess the secrets of resurrection and ascension. In 925 BC, the pharaoh Sheshach, the biblical Shishak, brought the looted treasure of the original Temple of Solomon to the Temple of Bubastis in Leontopolis, the city of the lions. Most people don't know that there was a diaspora during this time, and the Jews built duplicates of Solomon's temple in Elephantine Island in Aswan, and also in Leontopolis, the city of the lions, near Heliopolis, near Cairo. What we're looking at here is a stela to the lion god, who's called Mehes, at the Allard Pearson Museum near Amsterdam. Originally, it came from Leontopolis, and the label explains that the pharaoh presenting him with Mat is the Ptolemy, one of the Ptolemaic pharaohs, but it's uncertain which one. Mahas is labeled in hieroglyphs as the living lion, and the Greek writing on the stela says something like the holy house of the tomb of the lions. Well, wait a minute. That is saying that Leontopolis is another example of the lion's den. And so we're not talking about four-legged lions here, guys. We're talking about celestial beings being incarnate at these temple sites. When Shishak's son Orsakan I took the throne, he gave huge amounts of gold and silver, estimated at 383 tons, to the temples of Egypt. Some believe that this treasure was stolen from the treasury of Solomon's temple. And this stunning pectoral, which is one of my favorite all-time pieces of ancient Egyptian art, was made from gold from Solomon's temple. Now, here's the thing. Leontopolis, the city of the lions, where this gold was taken, was dedicated to Bastet, who is called the Lady of the East, or the Lion Lady. She's of the lion people. She's Bastet, the cat goddess. Now, here's the thing. Scholars believe that the Book of Enoch was written in Egypt by Essenes sometime after 164 BC, when a priest named Onias fled to Leontopolis, the city of the lions, and built another functioning copy of Solomon's temple. And this community actually flourished up until around 70 AD, after the destruction of Jerusalem. The exiled priests from Jerusalem who were living at Leontopolis, the city of the lions, are responsible for the Book of Enoch. And what this also means is the Essenes worshipped or lived in conjunction with the lion people. The Essenes, as I've elaborated on for the past decade, believed that they were visited by celestial beings who were assisting them in transforming themselves into angels. Now, what I'm asking you to consider here is that it's actually the lion people that they were living with. These Jewish mystics, the Essenes at Leontopolis, also invented the god of the seven rays, Shnubis or Shnumis. His name comes from the Egyptian creator god Khnum, and we looked at his temple at Kamumbo earlier, and Nufi, meaning good or perfect. So Shnubis is the good or perfect one. He's also equated with the demiurge Yaldabaoth, the creator god that stood between the human race and a transcendent god that could only be reached through self-realization or gnosis. In the Gnostic Apocryphon of John, the secret gospel of John, we read that Yaldabaoth had the form of a dragon, the face of a lion, with fiery eyes darting lightning and flames, and Sophia, the goddess of wisdom, wrapped around him in a shining cloud. Now, here we have this extraordinary connection that a lion being and a serpent are fused as one, and it's a being of great illumination. And much has been written about Shnubis as this lion and serpent god in the Gnostic texts. And the Gnostics actually believed that the snakes had symbolized the human brain, especially the pineal gland. That's a tie-in, once again, with what we were looking at with the Tree of Life imagery. The Leocephaline is the snake-entwined lion-headed figure of the Roman mystery called Mithraism, the Mithraic mysteries that some believe originated in Iran or Persia. The function of this leonine figure is uncertain, but it's thought to guard Mithras' secrets of immortality. And we can see exactly why this is, because that is the business of the lion people. Immortality, resurrection, ascension, that is their home. The prophecy concerning the coming Messiah was that he would be of the house of the lineage of David, the lion of the tribe of Judah, and would be born in David's city of Bethlehem. This perhaps answers why Mary, when she's enthroned, is sitting on the lion throne. You're on the lion throne because you're part of the lion people. Again, this tribe of celestial beings who have come to earth to assist in our ascension, resurrection, and transformation. New Testament genealogy traced Jesus' lineage back to David, who's we've already seen belonged to the tribe of Judah. He's the lion of the tribe of Judah. And he was thought by some to be the Messiah or anointed one who would become the king of the Israelites. So the lion symbolism was appropriate, and we still have it with us today. How many times do you see images online and elsewhere of Jesus as half human, half lion, as the lion of the tribe of Judah? And now you know why. Now you know the ancient lineage out of which this symbolism emerged. We're talking about Christ as the lion of the tribe of Judah, which is the lion of a tribe of celestial beings that originated back in ancient Egypt and Samaria, all throughout the Middle East, but originally came from the stars. And it's my firm conviction, that the lineage of the lion people continues. They're among us today. We are those lions. We are the lions of the light, the lions of the angelic tribe, those on the path of ascension, resurrection, and immortality. That is us. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I believe I've got a few minutes for some questions or discussion. And I once again thank Neil Gore and everybody at Portal to Ascension for giving me this opportunity. And I look forward to our conversation together.
Hey, great stuff, William. I just have a quick question about the lion people. Could they also be because of the auric field that was emanated that looked like a mane from some of these beings?
Yeah, that absolutely. Because again, as I mentioned, there's the possibility that they're seeing this with their inner sight, right, as opposed to their physical sight, actually seeing physical beings. So yeah, that's a very good connection, Alan. Thank you very much. That could be what we're actually looking at.
Right. And do you also know the quote from the Gospel of Thomas is, "Blessed be the lion that eats the man, but more powerful is the man that eats the lion." That seems like do you know that quote?
Yes. And I mean, there's some other connections we could make, branches we could go. Hercules with the lion skin and its connection with the golden fleece. We actually need a few hours to go through all this to make.
And the fact, no. Also, that the Sphinx was really a lioness to begin with, yeah. Yeah,
I'm questionable about that because the head of the Sphinx is not the original. We don't actually know what it was. Some people think it was actually dog-headed. It was Anubis. So we don't know for sure. But
I'll show you the work of Manu, but I think, thank you. Raji, did you have a question too?
Wait, before I go, Neil, did you want to say something?
No, go for it.
Okay. Wow. So William, there's so much information. There's a million thoughts going through my head, especially around the Watchers and the Book of Enoch. But before I go there, I want to take it right back to the neocortex.
Mm-hmm.
In thinking about ascension and oneness. So at one point, there was oneness consciousness going on.
Yes.
Then neocortex gets activated. Now, is there a connection between separation and then coming back to, is the ascension story coming back to oneness? What is the connection between oneness and the separation consciousness?
Here's the thing. When we're thinking about this, if we're one, there is no I anymore. There is no Raji. There's no Alan. You don't exist anymore as an individual soul or entity, okay? And so part of, I feel, the reason for the activation of the neocortex was to give that sense of individuality as a way of the soul expressing itself. Furthermore, in the backstory, there is they're here on a fix-up job. There had been souls that were embedded in the earth from a celestial cataclysm, and these stories indicate that the god beings, Enki, tweaked our DNA in order to make our body a more conducive vehicle for the ascension of the soul. And in order to teach those beings about ascension, the neocortex had to be activated. So in a way, it's a liability, but then also it's used for our advantage, because the neocortex gives us the capacity for science, for art, and even for meditation. All of these things that we use as ascension tools are only possible with an activated neocortex.
Hey, the Hertogs want to just jump in here for a second about some of the comments and some of their ideas. You have a little bit of time, William? I mean,
of course.
Yeah, go ahead.
Always happy to be with you and to see you.
Likewise, thank you.
It was really great.
Thank you.
Yes, we really feel that there's these different levels of intelligence that the Egyptians understood, some of which people would consider extraterrestrial, but we also think some of them are really even more godly. What do you feel about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, we are dealing with at the level of God beings here, but extraterrestrial, yeah, they're certainly not from this plane or this planet. Okay, so I'm a little bit hesitant to refer to them as extraterrestrials. I prefer just saying celestials, although when you're talking specifically about Ptah, there was, and also Sekhmet, there's a definite connection with the star system Sirius. So it is possible that they did originate from a planet in the Sirius star system.
Yeah, I was just saying your mic's a little low. Turn up, Desiree. Yes.
As you know, we did extensive the Sphinx, and the Sphinx face connects, according to the Inanna, with the line of Judah, and there is a reason for that, and that is the transformation. We become
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
connected with the lion on the seventh ray of light in this metaphysical sense. And so this is the time of rediscovery of the higher symbolism of the Sphinx, no longer being exclusively a symbol of Egypt, but a symbol of the new humanity that will be quickened at the end of time. As you can see, the fantastic work that the French, the Japanese, and other countries are now doing in Egypt to rediscover the importance of the whole planet. It's really the graduation of the human race to go to the seventh level of meaning of what was there, we think, on the ancient Sphinx face that was changed to the face of the human initiate. Alan, keep us on if that's possible.
Do you have a question for William, JJ?
Yeah, it was more like, how do you see the Sphinx in all of this?
Well, personally, I see the Sphinx as a leonine sculpture, most certainly guardian of the repositories of immense secrets. And yeah, I love that connection that the Sphinx is a symbol for ascended humanity. And it could well be that this is part of the message of my talk is we're hybrids of the lion people, and that we have within our DNA the codes placed there by Ptah in the Egyptian story, with the in cooperation with Sekhmet or Tefnut, which is of course another name for the Sphinx. And so I could easily go along with the concept that the Sphinx is the symbol for the next step in human evolution.
I want to thank you for the great work, Henry, that you're doing.
Thank you.
And also to all of us who are on the panel with you today, just to put more energy in the direction of new or neo-archaeology, because we just scratched the surface of something that is, we believe, is an amazing library of teaching yet to be found, that will revolutionize history and also bring the nations, all the nations of the world together, particularly those in the Middle East, to overcome the hostility and to see the collective initiation of the human race.
Well, I wanted to bring Flo in, and Raji and Neil. Flo, you've heard William and the Hertog's presentation. How do you synthesize that and bring it to another level?
I have a question for William, actually. I was just blown away by your talk, and it really put a lot of pieces together in sort of my life path. And my question is, when you speak of these lion beings, at least from like a communication, cosmic communication standpoint, a lot of people tend to reach out to the Lyra constellation, and they see them as lions. And in my personal communications with the Lyrans, they actually say they're in Sirius B due to their planet being decimated. So I found it very fascinating how you spoke about Ptah from Sirius and the lions constantly being together in, the hieroglyphics. And just curious if you feel there's any connection to Lyra with these beings.
I'm aware of that people speak of that connection between the lion people and Lyra, but I don't know where it came from. If that's maybe someone channeled that at one point, I don't know. So I don't have a source for that other than what people talk about online, but very definitely with the Egyptians, we do have the connection with Sirius. And so if they are saying the Lyrans, or people from Vega, perhaps, and the Lyra star system went to Sirius B, then that could easily be possible.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you get these communications, you're not really getting any context, and you could sometimes doubt yourself. So when you get certain history pieces, it brings a little clarity. to yourself.
Right. And that's something it's really easy to say a lot of things, but I just try to be careful to give at least a source where someone can go check the work and come to their own conclusion themselves, as opposed to just making a proclamation. So I wish I had more on that, and I will certainly be paying attention for more insights if possible.
Hey,
Perfect.
Neil, how does your research fit into what William and the Hertogs were saying here?
Well, so my research is a lot about the ancient mystery schools of Seshet and Thoth, and then also sound harmonics, in Egypt. But when it comes to the ET connection, I feel like there's a lot of star being connections. We have the reference to the Hathors, Orion, Sirius. So, I don't know enough to decipher exactly what's going on, and I don't think we all do, but it seems like it was like a central hub for this awareness, whether they were interacting with these beings, or whether they were getting to certain levels of consciousness. There's evidence to suggest that some of the tools that they used were in order to, shift their consciousness and maybe have direct communication with these beings. Or maybe they knew about the seeding of humanity and how we were involved with the seeding from multiple extraterrestrial races. But I definitely do see, compared to some other places where you see a lot of alignments with Orion, for example, I see Egypt, Kemet, as a place that's a central hub for connection to many different star beings.
Well, that's what you were saying, Desiree. Yeah, about the.
Well, I was going to say, if you go to the Lakota, they saw Orion as the hub or the base and the backbone, and then they had the Pleiades on one side and Sirius on the other. And if you realize that it also in Egypt, they definitely had Orion and Sirius. If you look at the south star shafts, both from the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber. So, Lyra doesn't exactly fit into there. If you listen to some other, we'll say, channeling information, the Pleiades tends to be, we feel from our cosmology, the cradle and hub of our species, what we would call the Adamic species. And then Lyra may have been an offshoot of that. So someone may be feeling that, as the offshoot that came then here to the Great Pyramid. But I would definitely say that Orion, and that was what Dr. Hertog saw, he saw Orion as actually the central control between our reality space and the next reality space. So that Orion is the central control, and everything else is kind of a spur off of that.
Right. What about you, Raji? Any comment?
Yeah. Okay. Two. Okay. First, let's go to the Hertex. Energy, hydrogen energy tech. Is there anywhere, I will pick up your book, but I'm so curious to know if there's anywhere else I can look right now to learn more about hydrogen energy tech and what's going on with it. What are some developments with it? Who's using it?
Right. Well, we've pretty much taken the modern technology, really, which is being used by both Toyota and other companies. And even in the Middle East, they're starting to look at using solar energy to take water. And now we know we can take salt water. Stanford University, I should say, did a whole study of taking salt water and making hydrogen. So that's part of our premise. And we're saying, hey, the same structures seem to be present also in Egypt. And we don't know the technology, no one's reported on the technology of Egypt. But if you had hydrogen, which you have plenty of water, you had the Nile, you had Lake Morris, and you had plenty of solar, and you had anodes and cathodes, which really wouldn't take too much. You can use nickel for some of that and other aspects. Then, why didn't they just use that? And they probably did. That's what we're proposing. We would love scientists to come forward and say, oh, this wouldn't work. But we haven't heard really from too many people that would say this could not be possible because it's a simple technology.
In one of the original papers we published in 1986, we showed that the Nile was once connected with a great river system that ran underground from east to west, emptied out in the area of the Nigerian Delta. If you look from space at the Nigerian Delta, it's the largest and one of the largest in the world, if not the largest. And there's not enough water systems that feed into the Delta that would equate for its massive size. So by back engineering through radar, a reconstruction of ancient geological sites, it was very clear that the Nile itself was connected with a much larger water system that ran through Africa, which ancient pre-Egyptian civilizations used in their evolution. So we're just on the cusp of reconnecting a much earlier history of the planet that
Right.
goes back at least another 10,000, possibly 20,000 years, all based upon water engineering, hydraulics, and the use of what we believe hydrogen energy from the sun, other sources that were able to be masterminded in the way that energy was collected, used, shared. And most of the structures along the Nile are actually holding basins or areas where some type of gaseous byproduct was used.
Thank you. And in your presentation, you said something so wonderful, and I loved it. Towards the end, you said, we are to set the captives free. Are you postulating that we are the cap at the top of the pyramid?
Oh, that's very nice. I like that analysis, but it's really more the fact that all of us have been captive on this planet. And when we start using better technology and we start using a higher consciousness, which of course William had talked about, we're really going to be reconnected to what we can say for the Egyptian aspect, to the gods, to those, to Horus, to other aspects of life. And so that's really, we've been captives. We don't realize that. We've been quarantined. And this is changing now with our higher understanding of our past, our present, and also our future.
You know, oh, go ahead, JJ. Yeah.
That was used to put down with snake oil salesmen, and the Egyptians had just the opposite. There was the spiral going upwards, the caduceus going upwards, and it was not so much the oil, it was the living water that they were able to mastermind in their fantastic waterway system all throughout East Africa.
Well, you know what I'm noticing for the first three presenters, Neil, the Hertogs and Flo, Karuna, and William Henry, is that Egypt is a model or a arena for ascension. It is like it's like embedded somehow in our history and lineage, this ascension mode, if you look deeper. So I'll ask William first and then Flo and then Hertogs. How can we practically use those tools that the ancient Egyptians left for us to model an ascension?
Well, I mean, we're in the process now of, at least personally, and I know other people are deeply researching the ascension oils from ancient Egypt. That's certainly one tool. Our understanding of the pyramid is grown exponentially in my lifetime. And now we just learned they're going to be doing some muon scans of the entire pyramid. We'll be able to tell us exactly how many chambers are in the Great Pyramid. So I think it's a matter of, first of all, understanding what is there. I mean, we've been trampling over all of these secrets for generations in large part. I mean, there have been schools of initiates that have known, but what has to happen is that individuals like us have to kick over those stones, roll away the stone, understand who these beings are, and then be able to reinterpret what we already know.
Yeah, Flo.
One other thing. My hope for a long time has been that, and you know, I just got an email this morning from someone saying that she looked into the tours that my wife Claire and I do, and she actually went to the Egyptian government and asked them, and they said, yeah, William Henry is, we admire him because he fiercely came to Egypt when nobody was coming to Egypt after the revolution. He was one of the few people, he and his wife Claire were one of the few people actually bringing people to Egypt. Okay? And if I had any cachet at all with the Egyptian government, I would say, you have the opportunity to transform Egypt into the jewel of the world, to recover some of this ancient technology, to use new technologies to show what is possible in the free energy sphere and now in the hydrogen sphere, the water sphere. The opportunity in the palm of their hands right now is just absolutely immense, because my intuitive take is that Egypt is getting ready to blossom in a way that we have never seen before, maybe not in probably 6,000-7,000 years.
What do you mean? How will it blossom? What are you thinking?
We're going to see an understanding, the research that's being done, both from satellite-based an archaeological perspective, as well as boots on the ground. I believe that they have recovered or discovered Nefertiti's tomb, and that there will probably be an announcement of that coming sometime in the next couple of years, which will be astonishing. It'll make Tutankhamun's tomb look like Walmart next to Tiffany or something like that. That's what we're told. So the new Grand Egyptian Museum is open and are opening later this year in 2022, or for sure early 2023. So it's like they're really primed for a renaissance in Egypt right now.
Wow.
Feeling that. I'm feeling like more truths, more secrets are being revealed, not just in these esoteric or mystical circles, but, on a more global and current affairs realm as well. William, you've really given me a lot to think about. You were referring to some characters, I'll call them, in a different light that I'm normally used to hearing them. For example, the Anunnaki are bad, or the Nephilim are the giants that have tried to rule humans this whole time. But you've given me things to think about in the sense of like, hey, first of all, good and bad. I don't really like using those terms, but in a general sense, they have been seen as playing, bad actors in a way.
It's super easy to cast people in a negative light because people like to hear crap like that and they buy it. They don't critically think about this. They don't go do the research themselves. They listen to someone saying, "Oh, Anunnaki bad, gold mining, they slave race, all that's pure garbage." Okay, it's absolute garbage. Anybody that even mentions that anymore is instantly discredited because we know that's a fantasy of Zecharia Sitchin, for example. So once we peel away the disinformation and start looking into it with actual scholarly information, not speculation or some guy trying to make a buck on a speaking circuit, we got a completely different picture emerges. It's more nuanced, it's more complicated. And that's, some people just aren't into complicated. They want to make it easy. And
you agree with that, JJ and Desiree?
Yeah, well, we were also going to just talk a little bit about the ascension process, because I know we didn't say too much about that in our work, but actually water itself has always been used as a purifying ritual before the process of ascension or whatever, so that's part of this. And if that water was, we'll say, HHO, or different ways you can say it, Brown's gas, it actually could help enlighten the mind and the body, not only to live longer, that's of course one of the goals, but also then for its understanding of, it's almost like ozone therapy. You get into another state of consciousness. And I believe there's no doubt that if you even sit inside a pyramid, or you get this other state of consciousness. So initiation and ascension was definitely key to the process of all of Egypt. But of course, it was unfortunately by the selected few at the time, it seemed.
Well, I think you're talking about baptism too, and mikvahs. But what were you saying, JJ?
I'm saying we're going from a new age, which is one of generalities, to an age of synthesis, where we bring things closer together with real science and real detective work. And then we go into what I consider an age of ascension, where we recognize the planetary harmonic of heart, connected now with the seventh chakra, or the seventh seal, which would be the sign of the Enochian, the seventh ray of light, but also what William said earlier so beautifully, that we have this rising energy within ourselves to see this collective initiation of the human creations working now on the seventh level of human potential. It's no longer a metaphysical symbol. It is migrated now to an actual breakthrough in hydrogen, alternative energy, in medicine, the medicine of light, with the concept of water as a healing therapy, which the Egyptian had identified with their healing pools that had a certain chemical interactions with the hydrogen process. And finally, with the concept of a cosmic change coming, where we're seeing the elevation of humanity cosmically and cosmologically, in terms of reaching out and doing more than simply seeing an earth-based civilization. And that was the whole idea of Ptah, reaching to the creative aspect of the divine mind in the heavens.
And we know William's information is also the individual power of ascension within all of us, and that's actually critical. But we also like to overlay that with higher levels of intelligence that also, we'll say, couple with us as we grow in that ascension. And if the Great Pyramid was a place supposedly where the Pharaoh was able to go to Orion to ascend, then it shows that those energies of consciousness are still aligned with that sacred area. And so it helps us to couple with the highest levels of divine intelligence that was working in those areas.
As William said, going beyond the terrestrial to the celestial. That's the important aspect of the ascension process.
I think that's what Flo was talking about in your presentation, right, Flo? Can you talk about that? Because the Hertogs didn't hear it, and about, the process of ascension through frequencies and light and the beings that came.
Yeah, well, I get my information mostly from cosmic communication and what has been relayed to me, which, we're in an Akashic field and there's information in the field and we're just picking up on it like antennas. And what I was getting guided was the pyramids were pretty much constructed on ley lines in alignment with specific star constellations to anchor down a certain multidimensional frequency. So the initiates that go in would naturally come to a knowing, an awakening, an alignment. And this was a soul technology that the mystery schools embedded, understanding that, in this incarnational journey that we're all part of, there's a level of amnesia. So these temples, they would bring in the mystery initiates into them, and there would be levels of instant knowing dependent on the soul's understanding and level. So that's pretty much what was coming down to me.
I think this is why we keep going back to Egypt. There's so many secrets to our soul and spiritual understanding, because first of all, they lasted for 20,000 years, one civilization, and probably before that and probably I would say more of that population was attuned to spiritual knowledge than just being slaves for the pharaoh. Do you think so, William?
Yeah, definitely. There undoubtedly were slaves to the pharaoh, right. But there's also just this legacy that we're now only starting to identify with, and an understanding that, hey, for example, if you've got the Great Pyramid fully functioning, and in some people's opinion, it's also an acoustic device that could, for example, entrain our brain waves at a frequency that engenders prosperity and peace and harmony. Now that affects everyone. That affects everyone. So, in fact, I think of ascension not just as a spontaneous event like rapture or something like that, where suddenly you're beamed to another star system. But ascension, in my view, is also a quest for wholeness and holiness. So imagine if you've got a technology, again, a pyramid that is bathing the entire civilization and training the brain, maybe even high in gamma frequencies that enable us to access higher consciousness realms. That's profound, and that's something that perhaps we could even try to duplicate in our own civilization. We're entrained to frequencies that have nothing to do with well-being and harmony. But what if we could find ways to not mandate, but to offer to the entire civilization of these codes and frequencies they're lacking right now in our civilization? It would be profound.
Well, actually, of course, Professor Golag in Moscow, in the area of Russia, I should say in general, and it's kind of hard to say that right now during this time, but he's built pyramids that aren't even the same angles as what we find in the Great Pyramid or in the Yucatan. And he's found, even when he grows food in there and gives the food to prisoners at local prisons, that their consciousness shifts. So there's no doubt that just having the pyramid, he describes it, well, most energy fields like the consciousness field goes around, but when you have a pyramid, it actually makes a difference. It makes a shift in consciousness. And that is how he explains it. So it's very interesting that people are trying now, and of course there are a lot of things with pyramid power and pyramid energy, but it is certainly a way of aligning your mind with a higher consciousness field.
Maybe those obelisks that are spread around the planet. There's an obelisk in a lot of great cities, New York City, Paris, London. There's all an obelisk somewhere in the center. And maybe those are antennas of higher creative consciousness just by their, structure and existence.
It's interesting to note one of the ancient calendar seals in Egypt is the sign of the pyramid, two-dimensionally speaking, surrounded by a circle, which could be taken the entire compass of the earth, as it was known in the ancient world. So pyramid power was understood by the ancients as not simply being a territorial interest, but one of all cultures. That the cultures of the world, from China, India, and certainly all the major cultures we have found in the New World, had some aspect of the pyramidal seal connected with their sacred art, their sacred what we call symbolism. And we find this even on the coins and sacred albums.
Right.
We're coming across in our ecological work.
And we have friends going around right now. They're about to go to Egypt fairly quickly. Then they're going to go to Mount Shasta. They're going to go to Yucatan and to Hawaii. So, certain sacred areas are being activated. And even though this has been done for years, many people have done tours. I'm sure William Henry has done many tours to activate the sacred grids. It's very important now because we really need to call in that higher energy that Thornton talked about, to bring in that higher consciousness to transform the planet. I really think we're in a world of positive and negative dualities, and we need to keep the shift towards the positive as much as we can. And these key points are part of it.
Right.
I so appreciate that aspect. Every time we're together, you always emphasize that, Desiree and JJ, and I really appreciate that so much. So thank you for that again.
Yeah. Flo, do you have any, Neil, we have to wrap up, but Flo, please jump in and add some wisdom there.
Well, it's just great to soak in the wisdom of all these amazing speakers right now. I'm learning a lot, but I just, from a personal standpoint, I'm excited that the fact that we're having this conference right now shows that our species is on the cusp of relearning the ancient ways. And I feel, that taking it to the next level is, in addition to uncovering this information, like the speakers have said, let's to actually start constructing this technology on the planet and being in service to the next generations. I feel that's our duty right now, to be receiving all this knowledge to make it practical for the next generations.
Right. And Raji, what do you conclude from this little discussion here?
Yeah, very similar to what Nature just said. I'm excited for the future. I think it's extremely bright. And like you guys said, like the fact that we are all on this call right now, sharing this information, experience, and love, it's going to be great. I'm excited for it. So thank you.
And if I can remind everyone, we're actually pyramids when we sit in a state of meditation. And so we can create that same field. It's great to be in Egypt. It's great to go to Yucatan, but we don't have to wait. We can do it right now.
Well, that's what I was saying. The king's chamber is where the heart is, about 2/3 of the way up, and that's our sacred chamber. But I just feel it's very valuable to unite the modern spiritual movement with ancient knowledge, because the secrets are eternal, and they're there, and they're here as tools to serve us in our evolution. So thank you. Neil, anything?
Yeah. I want to share a few events as we transition.
Oh, wait, JJ had one more thing. Did you have one more thing?
JJ. You're muted.
As we come together in closure of this session, I want to thank all of you. We're here in the Southern California in an archaeological discussion about Egypt from our side. But rather than simply saying, as the Greeks, "Ad to the stars," let us say "Upuaut," ascension in the Egyptian language. So Upuaut to all of you. May we have many years of fantastic work together as a team. And thank you, Alan, and thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a great day.
Thanks, William.
Thanks, William. So I want to ask you guys first, have you heard of the Pyramid Village in Florida?
No.
I'm about to go there in a few weeks, and I guess there's this whole entire village that's been created that you can get a hotel for $105 a night, and it's all made in a way where they are harnessing the energy, and it's marketed in a way to come rejuvenate yourself. I didn't even know it existed until last week.
Alan will have to do that.
It's next to Coral. It's not too far from Coral Castle. So
cool.
I'll give you guys an update on that.
That was the guy came all the way from the Baltic area, Latvia, to be able to go to that.
The Coral Castle. Yeah. So
right,
you're going to talk about the event coming up with William, right? Neil?
Yeah. So thank you again, guys. And we're gonna transition now to sharing a few events, and then Flo's gonna introduce me because I'm next. So first, I want to let you know about William Henry's next event that's upcoming, which is Halo 1.0, which is a 2-day retreat. And William, are you still on? If you are, do you want to just kind of briefly talk about this?
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Yeah, so looking forward to this. This is work I've been doing over the past decade or so. The title Awakening the Pearl comes from a Gnostic gospel called the Hymn of the Robe of Glory, or the Hymn of the Pearl. And it refers to that divine spark within us and how that the Gnostics awakened it. And so it's a extensively researched presentation with hundreds of slides of wonderful art, all geared towards helping you connect with that divine spark within and awakening it.
Thank you. And it's going to be on April 23rd and 24th. So if you guys are interested, go to portalascension.org. It's the first one there. And William Rudgy asked about the whole Anunnaki connection and the Anunnaki as light beings. So I just want to let everyone know we did do this conference a few weeks ago, which was the Sumerians of Mesopotamia online conference, in which William presented on the Anunnaki as light beings. It was like a hour and 15-minute presentation, just going deeper into this awareness. Really shifted my perspective, brother. Like it was just like taking the information to a whole other level and really going deep within the metaphors of what happened in order to kind of connect it to our light body. Right?
And it's coming more from an academic level. I have lived right near the Vanderbilt University Divinity Library, so I had access to a lot of material that a lot of researchers don't have access to, and especially people talking about the Anunnaki are completely unfamiliar with this material. I know that that's the case because they never talk about it. They never talk about the actual terms that refer to the light body and the teachings of the Anunnaki that relate to the light body. But I went and found all of that, and my goal was to bring it back to us, at the quote unquote popular level. We're not, not the non-scholar, non-academic level. Maybe 12 people know what I was talking about in the academic world, but it has to be brought down into the useful level of people like us that are doing the spiritual work, that are actually wanting to advance this light body research. And there's just, it's real gold. It's real gold information that I hope will inspire the next generation of Anunnaki researchers to move into this direction and to build on these facts and these concepts.
Right. And it's really what's shifting the victim perspective that comes with the story of the Anunnaki.
Exactly. It gets away from that whole slave race, blah, blah. Yeah.
Cool. So thank you so much again, William. Appreciate you.
Pleasure.
Brother.
Thank you, Neil. And keep up the great work, and always appreciate it. So we'll see you all soon.
See you later. Bye. And I'm going to share one.